Larry, thank you so much for being here. You heard the description there. You did take issue on X, as it's now called. Explain to us exactly what you found objectionable, at least in Harvard's initial reaction.
David, the statement by 30 student groups blaming all violence on Israel was a moral absurdity that appeared to reflect views at Harvard. And I thought it was very important that the Harvard administration, the Harvard leadership, made clear that those students were not speaking for the Harvard community. And at the same time, in the same way that previous leaders flew the Ukrainian flag over Harvard Yard after Putin's invasion, in the same way that Harvard stood with America after 9/11, I thought it was appropriate for there to be a strong Harvard statement condemning, in the strongest possible terms, Harvard-Hamas terrorism. And after a couple of days without such a statement, I expressed my view publicly, having expressed it privately before. There was an initial statement that, frankly, wasn't very strong and didn't distance Harvard from the student groups. And now I'm glad to report that President Gay has condemned terrorism in strong terms and has distanced Harvard from the 30 student group. So the kind of leadership response that I was looking for has now happened. There's still a lot of uncertainty and confusion, and so these are not going to be easy days to navigate, and there are agonizingly difficult questions around the response. On the one hand, there's a right of self-defense and a right of response. On the other hand, when Hamas is using human shields, is using hostages as human shields, there are incredibly difficult questions about the appropriate and prudent and morally right response. But it seems to me that if university communities want to make their contribution to that debate, the necessary precondition is that there be absolute clarity of the kind President Biden provided yesterday in the condemnation of terror. And that's why I have been so disappointed, I have to say, in the collective response of America's academic leadership to what has happened. If universities wanted to take the position that they didn't respond to the issues of the day, that they focused on pure scholarship, I could relate to that position. I think there are arguments for that position. But given the number of issues on which leadership at Harvard and other universities have spoken out, to fail to speak out with equal vigor when it is terror towards Israel was, I thought, a real moral failing. And I'm glad to see that Harvard has adjusted its position, and glad to see that, to varying extents, other universities are responding.
Yeah, and Larry, you're not alone in taking issue here. Your fellow Harvard economist, Jason Furman, has spoken out as well. But also we have Bill Ackman, who says it's not enough just to speak out at this point. We should know the names of the students who participated in these statements, because future employers should take that into account in their employment. Do you think it should go that far?
I think Bill's getting a bit carried away. Look, David, this letter was issued 6 hours after the attacks. Many in the groups had no idea that there was going to be a letter. Some who probably signed their groups on didn't fully know what they were signing. Some, I'm sure, were naive and stupid. I don't think this is a time for individual vilification. It's not a time for demonizing Israel, and it's not a time for demonizing students who weren't careful or who were silly in what they did. That's very important to maintaining a community. Bill's entirely right, and I would do the same thing as he does in wanting to make sure that the people I hired weren't people who stood with hate. But asking for lists of names, that's the stuff of Joe McCarthy, not the stuff, not what I think strong business organizations or universities like Harvard should be doing. I think we've got to keep a sense of proportion here. We've got to keep the temperature down. There are incredibly hard questions ahead of us around the response, and they're not going to be any good answers, but we may find less tragically bad answers if we can recognize the clear moral lines and then beyond that support open debate.
Larry, you, of course, are former president of Harvard. You're a renowned macroeconomist, former Treasury Secretary. It's awfully early going, I know, but as a macroeconomist taking a look at this right now, do you have any anticipation of what this dispute, this war in Israel may mean for the global economy?
If it doesn't spread, I don't think the global macroeconomic consequences will be large. There may be some positive impact on the price of oil. There may be some tendency to move to safe havens like US bonds. But I think the effects will not be large as long as this conflict stays contained. But we don't really know fully about the Iranian nexus with respect to this conflict. We don't know about the possibility of spread involving Hezbollah. And so I don't think we can be confident as yet that the conflict will remain contained, much as we might hope for that.
Larry, as you say, there can be no excuse for some of the things we've seen reported coming out of Gaza. There just can be no excuse for it all. At the same time, there are some underlying issues on the West Bank as well as in Gaza with Palestinian people. Do you see any room for hope that maybe ultimately coming out of this, there could be progress in the area?
Look, you never know, David, and it's often darkest before the dawn, and I'm no expert on the politics of that region. It seems to me terribly important to distinguish Hamas, which is a creature of terror committed to the destruction of the state of Israel, from many Palestinians who have legitimate claims about the lives they have been forced to lead. And I hope that a prudent Israel will give no quarter to Hamas terror, but will at the same time recognize that there are many Palestinians who do not stand with Hamas terror, and that ultimate peace depends upon arrangements that reflect their need to live lives with opportunity and security. And that's what we all have to hope for. It was out of the terrible Yom Kippur War that came the Camp David agreements, and perhaps again it will prove to have been darkest before the dawn. That's what we all need to hope will turn out to be the case. But right now, we have had unconscionable terrorism, and it would be a real mistake to suggest symmetry at a moment of this kind.